Which it seems that if we do that, as you notice, that anything you say or I say, we are automatically deemed as being racist, Islamophobe haters. And we want to try and squash this whole, I can't criticise Islam because if I criticise Islam, I'm an Islamophobe. And that's or that I hate all Muslims. That seems to be the favourite recently, that if I say anything about Islam, I must therefore hate all Muslims. And it just simply isn't true.
Well, and I love what you were saying right before we went live, and that was that sort of idea that you're an Islamophobe or that you hate Muslims or that you don't have a right to speak because you don't have enough knowledge or the genetic code to speak on these issues was something that was exclusively towards non-Muslims about up until the last 10 years. And now that same argument is being applied to people like me, to Muslims, who have been born and bred Muslims, who have studied the faith. Oh, it's like, if you don't have the right opinion, if you don't have the right sort of colleagues or the right funding sources or the right look or whatever you name it, if you don't check off all these boxes, you're officially, you're not Muslim, you're takfired, you're an Islamophobe, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And that to me is more dangerous than just saying, oh, Islamophobia. And I experienced it today. If you go to my Twitter, at Shireen Kadosi on Twitter, you see the conversation that I had with Mubin Sheikh, who's a radical turned counterterrorism expert, which is basically going from an Al-Qaeda affiliation to a Muslim Brotherhood affiliation, because he's still as much of an Islamist. And you see a professor called Mia Bloom, and that exchange there shows you exactly what I mean. And that is that this sort of ability to have this dialogue is taken and locked away in an ivory tower, that it's more like the Tower in Lord of the Rings, where you can't go up there and you can't talk about it unless you subscribe to that sort of vicious ideology, which is so different from when any religion started out. When we talk about the prophets, no prophet had an education. They were illiterate. When Islam itself was politicized, it was politicized because of scholars like Mia Bloom, for example, where they talk about the most contorted understandings of Islam, and they indoctrinate that, which is how we have political Islam today. And so that sort of behavior, that you can't have an opinion unless you have a certain degree, you can't have an opinion unless you have the right opinion, or unless you have all the certificates, it is such a violation of faith. It's like me going to some village in Pakistan and telling that person, that woman who's being abused, that man who's been indoctrinated, that you don't have a right to think or say anything because you don't have a piece of paper. And that to me is vile. It's vile.
This whole you can't have an opinion about Islam without you. I'm told every time I have an opinion about Islam, I hate all Muslims, and it's simply not true. But yet it's used as a way of trying to shut me up from having an opinion. But if you do that, surely then you're expecting me to live in a dictatorship. Well, absolutely. I don't want to live in a dictatorship. I want the freedom to criticise any religion and or faith or ideology, whatever terminology people want to put on it. But the truth of it is, right now, we have a problem with Islam. We don't. Yeah. I can sit in a cafe and I can criticise Christianity, and no Christian's going to walk up and want to kill me for it. But I had either an ISIS sympathiser or maybe even a member of ISIS, I don't know, coming onto my Twitter and saying, kill all Kufa, kill them all. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not asking for any Muslims to be killed. I'm not praising the death of any Muslim or asking for anybody to go out and target Muslims and kill Muslims. But when it's said to me, it's almost like it's oh yeah, but they don't represent us. They don't represent Islam. But these people can go to the text and they can justify their actions using the text of the Quran. So we can't keep saying it's nothing to do with Islam, because if we do that, we're actually playing into their hands and giving them what they want. Would you agree or disagree?
I absolutely agree. We have to look at the doctrines of war. There is no doubt. I mean, it is like saying that the earth is flat. If you say there isn't that violent element in Islam, that warring element, and then from there you can have a conversation about, well, what context was it in? When is it okay? When is it not okay? You can have that dialogue once you accept the premise that jihad is a part of Islam. Jihad is not a personal struggle. It is pure violent war, and that's what we're seeing today. From there, you can talk about how people are manipulating it, and all of that dialogue is great, but you can't even get there until you stop having intellectuals and liberals killing off not just a physical death, but an intellectual death, the death of free thought, the death of free speech. I mean, those deaths are already happening on a much larger scale than what we see with just violent jihad as it is. So to me, it's a twofold problem. It's you've got the violence like we saw in Fort Lauderdale, like we saw with, what was it, M62, and then you've got the sort of Twitter world, and where anyone can jump on and see exactly how this system works in shutting people up.
Yep.